From Virginia reserves, the gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Chairman, I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 3 minutes.
The re-election strategy for every single Republican member of the House is to stand strong, with a president willing to take children from their parents in order to look mean and nasty and cruel to children who are fleeing for their lives. You own that. That is your campaign strategy. As of today, Republicans want to put the children in the same jails as the parents and fight to hold them indefinitely and demand we charge asylum seekers as criminals and jail them with their children. The more than 2,300 children who have been taken from their parents and put in a vast system spread over thousands of miles. We just don't know if those children will ever see their families again. You own that too. That is what you are campaigning on to save your jobs this coming November. Taking DACA away from dreamers, that's your policy too. And then putting bills on the floor to cut legal immigration and build a wall are your strategies to blame Democrats for what you are doing. Republicans want to be both the arsonists and the firefighters, and you can't be both. I don't blame Speaker Ryan and Chairman Goodlatte. They're not bad people. They are both decent men of faith who have been put in a position of defending policies that are cruel, inhumane, and run deeply contrary to the will of the American people and the values of our nation. This must be morally wrenching for them, but honestly, I have little sympathy. Each has made a devil's bargain to trade their reputation for Stephen Miller's agenda and Donald Trump's name. Legal immigration? No. An asylum policy that protects human lives? No. DACA to protect dreamers? No. Policies that treat wife-beating, rape, and human trafficking as matters that require us to protect women? No. A nation of immigrants? No. All they want is a wall. Even though both are leaving office because the Republican Party is no longer home for decent men and women of values, faith, and conscience, both are leaving us with one last commitment: to put the needs of this erratic president above the will of the people and above the good of our nation. At some point, someone needs to stop complimenting the emperor on his new set of clothes and start telling the president he's naked, covering his rear end from all the lies, the deceit, and the soullessness is no longer sustainable.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the president and to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the ranking member of the Crime Subcommittee, the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
You said 2 minutes. From Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the distinguished gentleman for yielding, and it certainly saddens me to have to come and to call legislation harsh and cruel. For if there's anything that we should do in a bipartisan or frankly nonpartisan manner, it should be the complement to the Statute of Liberty, which over the centuries has been the standard bearer of the values and virtues of this nation. I'm saddened that we have come to a point, having worked on the Judiciary Committee with outstanding leaders like my ranking member, my chairman, the subcommittee ranking, Ms. Loughran, for many years on real immigration reform, here we are today. Let me tell you why I'm opposed to this. It may be because I represent Americans. Americans who are in the 18th Congressional District in Texas. It may be because we're one of the most diverse cities. My mayor says the diverse city in the nation. It may be that we have South Asians and Haitians. We have people from Eastern Europe. We have those, of course, that are Latino. We have those from the Caribbean and Africans and many, many more. We have those from Europe. And here's what this bill will do. It will quash any opportunity for mom and dad to bring in extended family members, citizen mom and dad to bring in their family members. It ends legal immigration on what we have called the values of America, family reunification. At the same time, the ugly name that has been given to diversity visas is not true. Those who come through the diversity visa for small countries, should we discriminate against small countries, have the highest level of education and go into medicine and science and try to help. And then there is no relief for DACA. People who are military, paramedics, lawyers, teachers, we're dependent upon them, having grown up here, loving this nation, pledging the flag, pledging to the United States flag. And
The
then finally,
gentleman's
let me
time
say,
has expired.
it is a sin and a shame that we have an administration.
Madam Chairperson.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Madam Chairperson, I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
The gentlewoman's recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank the kind gentleman. And then as we have not done anything for DACA, we have not done anything for the children snatched away from their families. The children that I saw for 2 days in the border at Texas, Roger, who I held in my hand, maybe the 2-year-old like this, because what it does is it does nothing to reunite the children. It does nothing after 20 days to be able to protect them, because the fake executive order does not go beyond 20 days. And frankly, we don't know where the 2,000 children are. And I know the values of the faith community in America are to reunite. I am saddened that we have a bill.
gentleman's
I ask
time
my
has
colleague
expired.
to oppose this bill, and I yield back my
The
time.
gentlewoman's time has expired. And the gentleman from New York is recognized.
I now yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Lee.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our ranking member for yielding and for your tireless advocacy. I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 4760. This is an anti-immigrant bill, plain and simple. It fails to provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. It dismantles family immigration. It ends the important diversity visa lottery program. It funds $30 billion for Trump's border wall, and it fails to address the horrible zero-tolerance policy. Why are we moving forward with a bill that does not address the malicious detention of families seeking asylum? A bill that does nothing to reunite the 2,300 children separated from their parents. These policies are really a disgrace and a stain on our country. Just imagine the horrors of these families fleeing violence, domestic abuse. But we're not providing refugees. No, our government has been ripping children out of the arms of parents. We're holding kids in cages. And now the Trump administration wants to leave whole families, including young children, in jail for extended periods of time. Locking up kids is child abuse. It's a violation of their human rights. We must ensure that these children are reunited with their families. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill. And as my colleague, Congresswoman Chu, said, it is about making America white again.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Virginia continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Is he here? Madam Chairperson, I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. This bill does many things, but the one thing that it does not do is heal the wound in the soul of America. It does not provide a pathway for these babies to return home to their parents. This bill is about as bad as it can get if you care about what you see in this picture. Children should not become the tools of the trade for politicians. This bill will legitimize children as the tools of the trade. We cannot pass it. We should not pass it. We must rethink what we're doing to this country. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
How much time has each side got, Mr. Speaker?
The gentleman from New York has 2.5 minutes. The gentleman from Virginia has 4 minutes.
I yield now 1.5 minutes to the distinguished ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, Ms. Lofgren.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, this bill is a step in the wrong direction in so many ways. I wish that we had had an opportunity to sit down, reason together, and come up with a plan that really serves our country. That didn't happen. Here's what the result was. The Chamber of Commerce has just reported that the Niskanen Center that they have relied on indicates that if this bill became law, the U.S. would lose $319 billion in GDP. That would be the impact, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for adopting this bill. And I wonder what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are really doing. By turning every undocumented person in the United States, currently a civil law violation, into a crime, we're now creating 11 million prosecution opportunities. At the same time, the Washington Post is just reporting, and I quote, this is the headline, "Trump administration will stop prosecuting migrant parents who cross the border illegally with children," official says. What are we doing here? We're doing a bill that would incarcerate families and children to pursue a policy that the administration now says they don't intend to pursue. Now, I don't have a lot of trust in the Trump administration because it changes daily, but I will say, if I may have an additional 10 seconds.
I yield an additional 30 seconds to the gentlelady.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
I would urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to take a step back here. Your president has left you out on a limb. He just sawed that limb off for a bill that does damage to the country, for a policy that he now has apparently abandoned. This is a ridiculous situation here, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Virginia.
Speaker, I believe I have the right to close, and I'm the only remaining speaker. So I reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
I'm prepared to close. How much time do I have to?
Gentleman from New York has 30 seconds.
Thank you, I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this bill is a harsh anti-immigrant package that fails to provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers and that fails to end family separation while slashing legal immigration, crippling our agriculture industry, criminalizing undocumented immigrants, undermining public safety, and removing critical protections for families and children, all in one monstrous bill. There is no justification for anyone voting for this bill. I urge my colleagues to oppose the legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 954, the previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
To amend the immigration laws and the Homeland Security laws and for other purposes.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from New Mexico seek recognition?
I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentlewoman opposed to the bill?
I'm opposed in the current form.
The gentlewoman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 4760, to the Committee on the Judiciary with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. In Section 1, in the heading, strike Table of Contents.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to dispose of the reading.
Is there objection? Without objection, the reading is dispensed with. Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from New Mexico is recognized for 5 minutes in support of her motion.
This is the final amendment to the bill, which will not kill the bill or send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage as amended. When DACA was terminated in September, this chamber promised hundreds of thousands of young people and the American public that we would have a public debate and a vote to protect dreamers. We gather here today instead to vote on legislation that fails to protect these young people, radically changes our immigration laws, and derails the bipartisan Queen of the Hill effort that would give us a solution. H.R. 4760 is a hyper-partisan, sweeping bill would fundamentally change our legal immigration system and negatively impact our economy, which is why it's opposed by the majority of the Republican conference, faith groups, businesses, chambers, and quite frankly, everyone in between. If enacted, these policies would undermine local law enforcement, hurt businesses, and rip apart communities through mass deportation, while telling hundreds of thousands of American dreamers that they can only be a guest in the country most of them have ever known, but that they will never truly be American. The truth is, this bill is a poison pill-ridden effort that does nothing to get us closer to passing a bipartisan, narrow, targeted solution for dreamers. Congress, that's each and every one of us, has a responsibility to address this Trump-created crisis in a bipartisan, rapid, compassionate, and meaningful way. This is what the American people want us to do. But since the start of the Trump administration, a divisive and twisted narrative has been perpetuated to villainize, scapegoat, and hurt immigrant families. This week, the pain of immigrant families was felt by each and every person in America that heard the terror and cries of children being torn from their parents. This week, we've experienced the horror many immigrant families feel every single day. And we've seen how ugly it is to use vulnerable immigrant children, mothers, and fathers as political pawns. But we've also seen Americans stand up for these families. We saw them rebuke the president and his heinous policy. And today, we must do the same thing by standing up for dreamers. We must meet our responsibility as members of Congress by voting for legislation that fixes this Trump-created DACA crisis, not by voting for legislation that makes it worse. Every time that a bipartisan fix for dreamers is within our reach, this chaotic Republican conference caves to those who aim to exploit dreamers in order to impose radical changes to our immigration system. The provisions in H.R. 470-60's partisan anti-immigrant bill betray our most fundamental American values. It is a reflection of the xenophobic agenda of the Trump White House, which prioritizes billions upon billions on a wasteful wall, cuts legal immigration, and ends our obligation to dreamers. This is the latest example of Republicans putting Trump's anti-immigrant demands above moral decency, families, dreamers, and the will of the American people. It is indefensible and immoral that this House continues to derail bipartisan efforts to protect dreamers. The antics that we are witnessing are why the American people have lost faith that their representatives can find bipartisan solutions to our nation's most pressing issues. But as a member of Congress in the minority party, at a time of deep political division and instability, I still believe it's possible for us to work together to improve the well-being of families, children, and young people. And that's why I'm imploring you to join me in voting for the Bipartisan Dream Act that upholds our values and fulfills our promise to protect dreamers and their families. I yield back.
He yields back. For what purposes, gentleman from Virginia? On this vote, the yeas are 193 and the nays are 231. The bill is not passed.